Well, the U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to review Donald Trump's travel ban, which means travel restrictions on people from 6 Muslim-majority nations can be applied to some individuals. For more clarity on what this will mean, we want to turn to Professor Josh Blackman. Now, he is a law professor at South Texas College of Law in Houston, Texas. So thank you so much for joining us, sir. There's a lot of confusion. This news really just breaking the last hour or so. So what's your reaction to the decision made by the U.S. Supreme Court?
Well, thanks for having me back. The first thing to stress is that this is a unanimous decision. All 9 justices agreed that the travel ban can go into effect in part. Specifically, the people who are now subject to this ban are those without any connection to the United States, those without relatives or offers of employment or even admission to a university. If you don't have any connection to the United States and you hail from one of these 6 countries, you can now be denied admission under the travel ban. For those who have such connections, a father, a brother, a mother, a sister, or a job offer, they are still exempted from this travel ban under the High Court's ruling.
Okay, fair enough. But we saw travel chaos at borders around the world with people trying to come into the United States and being denied when this was initially enacted. How will officials be able to determine those bona fides? I mean, other than unfurling your family tree, how are they going to do it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. And this decision came as a surprise to myself and I'm sure those at the Department of Homeland Security. What I suspect will happen is we will see some guidance from the government deciding how people can be determined to have these bona fide connections. Justice Thomas noted in a concurring opinion that ultimately the task of deciding this may become, quote, unworkable. And the lower courts, the same lower courts who put this policy on hold, may in effect weaken it significantly by saying many people are now subject to this safe harbor if you have a bona fide relationship.
Could this, though, potentially create travel chaos at various points? I mean, for example, in Toronto, you go through U.S. Customs before flying to the U.S. Can you see problems at other points of departure around the world?
Well, again, this will only apply to nationals of the 6 countries, and even those nationals, there are a number of waivers that they can apply to get these visas. There could be chaos, but if I can predict what I think will happen, we'll get some guidance from the federal government explaining how to screen these people in advance before they even get on a plane. But I'm certain on it that there'll be some people who do get stuck at the airport again. And this is where the lower courts will come in and weaken the court's order by saying that, well, these people do have the requisite relationships. In other words, there will be every opportunity to test this decision as it's implemented over the summer.
Okay, now, could this, and how could this potentially impact the U.S. refugee resettlement program?
Well, a significant portion of the decision that hasn't gotten much play yet concerns the refugees. The court said that going forward, the refugee ban can go into effect so long as refugees do not have a relation to the United States. The fact of the matter is many refugees come to the United States through that policy because they do not have relations in the United States. So this will, I think, have its greatest impact on the refugee program.
What about the possibility of lawsuits? People who are effectively having to argue that they have a bona fide for coming to the United States. Are we going to see a lot of people heading to court?
Oh, absolutely. The various groups weren't expecting to lose this case. So I suspect that they will fight tooth and nail and try to get lower courts to clarify the scope of this order to the benefit of the refugees admitting.
Thank you, Professor. Really
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
your perspective on all of this, and we'll be watching. That was Law Professor Josh Blackman joining me live from Houston, Texas.